Sueños to Success. I'm your host, Dr. Victor Rios. Today we're joined by a leader whose story of survival and self-discovery reveals what it truly means to rise above hardship. Aaron Barrett is the Associate General Counsel for Product at Zoom Communications Incorporated. That platform that many of us were on in the pandemic, and even today we rely on it at work or at school. That thing called Zoom. Well, he's part of that organization, part of that company, and he's a leader in that company. But before becoming a legal mind at one of the most influential companies in the world, Aaron's journey began in a home marked by a lot of pain and stability, and he learned resilience through that. So he grew up in a home affected by alcoholism, and he faced challenges that could have easily defined him. Instead, he turned inward towards self-reflection, discipline, and even meditation to transform his suffering into strength. His story is not just about personal triumph, it's about how those lessons now inform his work, building compassionate, sustainable institutions in corporate America. And by the way, just so you all know, Aaron was also my student at UC Santa Barbara, so we'll be talking about that story. Welcome, Aaron. It's good to have you.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's start from the beginning. You got this childhood growing up. What are those first moments you remember being a kid and thinking about whether or not you were going to have a future for yourself, being that you were going through all these obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, my early life was, pretty scary for me, basically. Kind of a series of waking up in the middle of the night, hearing things, yelling, crashing, things like that. My dad was an alcoholic, and my mom has always been super strong and a rock and defended us well and took care of us well. And, we ended up leaving my dad when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and my mom raised my sister and I. And so all through there, there's a couple of different themes that come up, thinking about, how I felt then, how scared I was, and the skills that start to develop early on, like really early on as a child. And because of that, your survival instincts kind of kick in. So, you're constantly scanning for threats and for someone who might be mad, right? Or some kind of an issue that might be arising, and looking to neutralize the conflict or the threat. So I was a peacemaker. I was hyper aware of everything going on in a room. Early on in my life, I was using humor to kind of alleviate my insecurities. If I felt anxiety, I'd be telling jokes and stuff like that, and kind of a class clown really early on in life. But also had this kind of fire in me early on to make my life better. And I didn't know what that was or how to articulate that when I was younger. But I think, a couple of those kind of core skills that I had to learn when I was super young, I'm super grateful for, because they're the ones that taught me how to read a room, right? And to understand, like, if there's a problem going on or a conflict interpersonally between people or between myself and someone else, how to read the early signals of that conflict, how to go in and problem solve. Those are some things that I think early on I started to really develop, and they started to really, benefit me as I entered education and then getting into the working world, which started when I was 14 years old as a busboy and a dishwasher at a restaurant. These are all things where I was able to make a lot of progress in towards success because I had these kind of survival skills to kind of enter with.
The trauma as a child, a lot of times, of course, we look at what's called the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences.
Mm.
And the more that a kid has as an adverse childhood experience, whether it's domestic violence, alcoholism at home, poverty, all of these factors, right, that bring adversity to your life as a child, that a lot of times the trauma, the research shows, impacts your entire lifetime trajectory. You're more likely to have mental health issues later on in life. You're likely to,
Yeah.
get divorced later on in life. You're likely to have more, prone to drug and alcohol abuse, have
Yeah.
a worse job than other people, or not a great paying job out there. But so that's what the research shows. But the other part of the research, right, it shows that while trauma might not define us, it does refine us, right? And
Yep.
to be refined by trauma, meaning that those survival skills that you're talking about allow you to operate in the world in just a different way than other people. I remember, around that age myself, just not having a father,
Yeah.
my mom just being on her own, and then she was dealing with so much that she ends up getting caught up in the drinking and the
Yeah.
partying and neglecting her kids. So me
Right.
and my brother early on were neglected. There's a moment in my life when my brother, he's taking care of me. He's like 8 years old. I'm 4 years old. And it's 2 in the morning. Me and him are walking down the street in this like crazy avenue, man. There's like East Oakland, East 14th Avenue, now is known as International. And, it was during the height of the crack epidemics,
Yeah.
a lot of crazy stuff going on, and my brother's walking me. But that was home for us. We're not looking at it like, oh, this is dangerous. We're like, this is home.
Yeah.
So we're walking down the street, and my mom's coming from the bar, and she runs into us, and she's like, "What are you guys doing out here?" And then my brother's like, "Oh, we're looking for someone to take care of us."
Wow.
Yeah, so like being a little kid and not having the stability, I feel blessed because I leaned on my brother
Yeah.
to be my stability, even though he was only a little boy,
Mhm.
but I was smaller than him.
Yeah.
I don't stop to think about a whole lot what he was going through because he was alone as the stability. He didn't have stability.
Right.
And so to grow up as a kid with instability and all these adversities later in life, like I said, trauma doesn't define us, but it does refine
Yeah,
us.
absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned that because I mean, we were constantly moving after we left my dad. There was always, I changed schools tons of times because we were moving around and my mom was trying to work a job that, could afford housing and, taking care of my sister and I, and making sure we had what we needed. She did an excellent job thinking back. I'm just like, wow, how did she do all that, at that age, so young, and with all this other stuff going on in terms of getting divorced and dealing with, an abusive spouse and all these things. But all that volatility, right, that I experienced and, my sister experienced in her own way, my mom experienced, to come up through that experience, coming through the years, that prepares me super well for chaos, right? And so
Mm.
what does that mean when you hit the real world? Well, if you're in a restaurant and it's busy, right? A lot of people panic. I got calm.
You were working at restaurants.
Yeah,
What were you doing?
so my first job was a busboy and a dishwasher at a
I
restaurant
remember those
in
days.
Colorado, and then I worked all the way up to becoming like, server, bartender, and then I actually managed restaurants um, when I was at UCSB, and then after UCSB for about a year, and then I went to law school.
What restaurant were you managing? I remember running into you.
Yeah, it was Pierre Lafond Wine Bistro down on State Street before
Yeah,
it closed down.
that's right.
Yeah, it was a fun gig, but it was one of those things where, part of my success there was all about, it'd get crazy busy and I could just settle in. That I was used to crazy, right? I was used to chaos and to things being volatile. And
That's
so,
deep. Let me reflect on that. You
yeah,
said I was used to crazy. And that's the thing, right? When you grow up in crazy, when you encounter crazy again, right? Chaos,
yeah,
you know how to pause and kind of organize the situation while other people just, what's the, stress response in humans, right? A flight,
hmm,
what is it? Flight,
freeze
freeze
or fight.
or fight.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you could take one step back and not have to do any of those three.
Yeah, it definitely like that. I would go in and it was just those survival skills would kick in, like the scanning, like being aware of reading the room, right? It would get busy and I'd be able to see it all happening at once, right? Because I'm used to scanning for my dad coming home, and is he mad or is he happy? You know, and so you think about a restaurant, right? And it's
It's
like,
powerful.
are the guests happy? Are they mad? Is this person happy? Is this person getting frustrated with how long they're waiting for their
So the
table?
trauma you went through as a little boy kind of got you in tune with human emotion
Yeah.
as an older.
Yeah, and there's other, conflict with, my family is the divorce is happening and the aunts and uncles are involved and grandparent, everyone's, taking sides and infighting, all this stuff going on, right? And I'm the peacemaker, right? So to be a peacemaker, you have to be aware of who's
And you're a
upset,
little
who's got
piece.
conflict. Yeah,
You're a little
I'm like
peacemaker.
5, 6, 7 years old.
Telling
Um,
adults, like, what were you telling the adults?
Oh, like if I could, it's funny, I would be able to pick up on, why they were upset with this person, right? And why this person was so upset with that person. If they weren't communicating that well, trying to communicate each other's reasoning, and I think initially it was dismissed when I was like super young. They're like, yeah, you know what we're talking about, right? But then at an early age, I became effective at kind of communicating people's positions. And so I could mediate a lot of the conflict that was going on. And sometimes that would result in peace. Sometimes that would result in even more conflict, right? But in my case, it was definitely a skill I developed early on, not even knowing what that function was and thinking it was normal. It wasn't normal, like to mediate adult conflict when you're, 7 years old. But, it helped me become very aware of the dynamics that I was entering into in a room, when I went into a restaurant, when I went whatever space I was going into. And to this day, I walk in and the first thing I do is scan the room and understand like what the dynamic is, you
Yeah,
know?
that's that survival skill set, man.
Right.
It's powerful. I feel like even though my mom, uh, was I mentioned neglectful, um, she taught us a lot of these skills that you're talking about.
Yeah.
She was a single mom. When she was a teenager, a lot had happened. She had been kidnapped, that kind of stuff. She'd been through a lot of trauma, kicked out of her home when she was 15, never to
Mhm.
come back again.
Wow.
So she was going through a lot. So by the time she had us, she didn't know, right? She was incapable of raising children. And when we were coming up with her, I remember we would be on the streets because we were on the street a lot
Yeah.
with her. Either because, we didn't have a place to stay or we were traveling, and she was also fleeing from partners that were, you know, uh, uh, you know, uh, being abusive towards her.
Yeah.
So we were traveling with her a lot, and I would always be embarrassed because my mom, like uh, when we were traveling with her, I remember bus rides, man, like 20-hour bus rides. I'm like, when is this bus? And it was like not like a fun bus
Yeah,
ride.
no.
It's like smog everywhere, smelly people, people throwing up, drunk
Right.
people, all man, all that craziness
Yeah.
and making stops in the middle of nowhere and you get out and there's people trying to rob you. Those kinds of buses, right? And she would carry her money in her little bra strap. That's what I
Mhm.
would get embarrassed about because I was
Yeah.
like, why is she putting her money in her bra strap? As a little kid,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
all embarrassed, right? You don't appreciate what, in this case, a woman has to go through
Yeah.
to survive, right? So
Exactly.
she's got her money right there, and it's not a lot, but it's all we have. So she's got it there, and then we're just walking with her, and she's doing what you're talking about. She walks into a space and she's scanning,
Mhm.
and she looks at one guy, and the guy's looking at her, and she's like, "Come on this way." And then she looks at another guy, and the guy's kind of like, just there. And she's like, "Come on, boys," because she's at trying to gather information. This
Mhm.
is not the time of cell phones and information on you. You got to go ask people. You got to talk to people. You got to ask, "How do we get here? How do we go?" But she wasn't asking that guy, but she was asking this guy. And as an adult, I'm trying to figure out, like, wait, how does she know what guy to trust? The guy
Right.
over there, they're both guys on the street, and they both look the same to me. How did she know not to trust that guy that might rob her, but to trust this guy who would say, "Oh, by the way, I know how you can get there, and here's the information.
Mhm.
If you need to use the payphone, here's 10 cents. Back then, payphones were 10 cents. Here's 10 cents to go use the payphone so you could call someone, and I'll walk you over there, and no, no strings
That's true. Yeah.
attached." You guys want a meal? Let me know. That kind of thing. And she always found the right person to help her get to the next destination. Those are the
Yeah.
navigational skills she knew. Now as an adult, I realized, oh, my mom's always been a thin slicer. She walks
Mm.
into a space and very quickly, right, thin slices the situation.
Yeah.
And she knows that guy doesn't look like he's going to be good news for me. This person over here looks like it's someone I can trust.
Yeah.
And now as an adult and even growing up, I remember being able to have that skill walking into a room even today, even in the work world, right? You
Mhm.
walk in and you see who's upset, you see who's cheerful. I've developed the skill set when people are upset. I walk into a room, it's like a workspace.
Yeah.
I always go up to people that like look a little upset or tired, and I'm like, "How's it going?" And they're like, "Mm." And I'm like, "Oh, it seems like you've had a long day." And then they open up. They're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, this happened and this happened and this happened." And then by the time we start to talk, now we kinda broke the ice, and now they're feeling a little bit better about themselves.
Yeah.
And I take that back to those skills that we learned growing
Mhm.
up from those people around us that maybe we have to figure out how to guide them, or maybe they're teaching us
Mhm.
in this crazy, like you said, I was used to crazy in a crazy environment, and now we're able to use it in our adult experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's part of being kind of resourceful, right?
Yeah.
And especially when you don't have much, you have to be very resourceful with what's in front of you. And I think understanding who around you can be helpful, who's a threat to your safety, um, who who you can help, right? And there's a circle of people helping each other, right? When you get into those situations, like community is really important with people you can trust. Um, and so I think, yeah, I mean, it really resonates what you're saying.
You said something about your mom. You said she's very strong, or you mentioned something, and how has that, like, that strength kind of helped to carry you despite all the stuff that you went through?
Yeah, my mom, I mean, she went through a lot of transformation after we left my dad. And she definitely is one of those people who, you know, she feels deeply, but she's very has always had this wisdom almost innately, right? We always my girlfriend and I always referred to her as like kind of like Gaia, like Mother Earth, kind of this kind of vibe where she's very grounded, you know. And so she was going through chaos, but she was always had this very good kind of moral compass about her as we were going through all these difficult times, and not necessarily doing like the right thing, you know, black letter of the law, compliance kind of right thing, right? But more so doing what was right for the right reasons.
Mm,
You know, she had integrity.
yeah.
Um, and I think she really hammered home in me like the importance of integrity when everything's going wrong, like sticking to your integrity and sticking to your values. And you know, communicating that if I did that, then everything else is going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like no matter how hard it gets, you stick to that, you'll still have yourself, you'll still have your, you know, your grounding, and you can move forward and keep making progress, you know, and she exemplified that, you know, and things were tough for her, you know, like you said, single mom coming up then, not now. Like we made the world is very tough right now, right?
Yeah.
But there was a lot of dynamics that existed when I was a child, existed for her as a woman, and that were very tough.
Yeah. Man, I could only imagine, like, or I can't imagine. A lot of times, I think as men, we assume we know what women go through, but the truth is, we'll never know. We can only kind of listen to what they have to say about, like,
Yeah.
look, back then and even today, there's all this research, right, on women that work in the professional world and the men that work in the professional world, and they could be married, and they're both professionals, and um, and the men can be like very egalitarian, like, oh yeah, I help at home, I help raise the kids, I help, with the chores and all of that.
Mhm.
But when researchers go in and watch, the woman that's working 50 hours a week, right, and the guy's working 50 hours a week, but when they get home, you can visibly see that 9 times out of 10 women are doing much more of the work at home, even though they're
Mm,
working professionals. So,
yeah.
we never truly, I think, as men, will never understand really what women have to go through in our society. So it's fascinating too that commonality we have of this of the single moms kind of struggling to figure out like, wait, what am I going to do for my kids? How am I going to bring them up? Man, that's powerful. But I want to go back to your own journey. You've described yourself as a survivor, right? Kind of learning those skills to navigate spaces of
Yeah.
chaos. Going through this education system, how did that impact you in terms of schooling? Were you like a really good student? Were you okay? Did you already know that you were gonna, end up in college one day? Did you have all those resources there in place?
No, like early on, no, right? And I was always, I would say um, had some kind of innate intelligence and did okay in things that really could grab my attention at the time when I was early on in school. Like we're talking like, K through 5, we'll say. But there were things that when I was distracted and I was going through stuff at home, and it was tough for me to stay focused on all the things that were going on in school and then also managing everything that was happening in my personal life, right? And I think that kind of evolved into coming into more of like a middle school environment. I switched schools again naturally, right? And I got to a really good school, and that's when I started getting exposure to some couple of teachers who saw potential in me and really were,
Did they know your situation at home?
they didn't actually. They knew that they probably knew something was up just because I wasn't, um, I was kind of, like I say, kind of class clown a little bit, but they could tell I was smart and I did well on subjects that interested me and I cared about. But I had a couple of teachers, in middle school that really kind of leaned in and said explicitly, like, "Hey, you could be really successful. You could be really you're very talented, and if you apply your focus evenly across all the subjects and really apply yourself here, you're going to be able to do some pretty amazing things." Um, and I remember the first time I had a conversation like that with a teacher who approached me and said, "You could be successful. You should apply yourself." It hit me super hard, right? Because um, it was almost like some of that kind of approval or validation that you're looking for from, say, my dad when I was young that never came, right? And it's kind of that missing piece in you. All of a sudden, I have somebody who is respected, right, in the academic environment coming to me and saying, "Hey, you could be something here." And that lit a fire in me. Um, and I think, prior to that, I was always, when you don't get attention from like, your dad, right, or from people that you care about because there's all these things happening, I think you seek attention elsewhere, right? And that can be performative, it can be a healthy outlet, it can be a motivator. And at times for me, it can also annoy people and it can be tough. So when I was a little kid, I think the fire kind of morphed into this like, I'm going to be a performer, kind of, be silly and all that kind of stuff. And then when I saw somebody say, "Hey, you can apply all that energy to something that will make you successful," that's when it kind of clicked for me. And this was pretty early on. I was like 11, 12 years old, but I was like, "Oh, okay. Like, I should give this a shot." And so I ended up doing really, really well in middle school and kind of started to see some of those benefits. And I also noticed how, um, I was starting to build kind of like to the extent that you can at that age, a brand in myself where people, my teachers respected me, right? They thought I was a good student, right? I was, starting to get a little bit more athletic, right? I was a good athlete and they expected me to do well, right? These are all the kind of newer things that hadn't really been focused on for me individually as I was going through all this turmoil, the first, say, like 9 or 10 years of my life, but then kind of naturally getting some attention for, my innate skills. But then once I applied myself for my actual results,
Yeah.
that's when I started really getting the bug towards success because I realized that, um, perhaps I have what it takes to become really successful. And I knew
Man.
there's other examples of that, like in my family tree, like my dad's dad. So it's interesting. He was very successful on paper. He was also suffered from alcoholism and put his kids through their own journey, right? Which probably gave rise to a lot of what my dad, inflicted on us. But on paper, he was a UCLA MBA. He, was a biotech executive, the CEO of a couple companies. I had no relationship with him until I was, 8, 9, 10 years old, and then we got a little bit closer, and he'd gotten sober, and so we could have a relationship. But up to that point, I was aware of success because my dad was always, in his crazy stories, always telling me about his dad and how much of a jerk he was, but also how much he accomplished, right? And then I kind of connected the dots between those stories that I heard earlier in life, and when I started getting attention from teachers and from coaches and things like that, and started being able to produce results that, like, hey, maybe I'm cut from that cloth. Maybe I could be that.
You could be successful and not be a jerk, right?
Yeah. Well, let me be clear there. Yeah. Right. Maybe I can achieve, in success. But that's a good point that you raised, which
It's like
is
a clean kind of success.
exactly
Yeah.
from the second. I mean, as early as I can remember, I remember thinking, like, I'll never act the way that my dad has acted. And so that was always a central theme for me. And that goes back to, I was talking about my mom and integrity and values, right? Like, that became a part of my values. Like, I will never put, if I have kids one day, if I have a family one day, I will never put them through that, what you put me through.
Yeah. The negative role modeling is so important, man.
So important.
Because a lot of us, I got this whole framework, right? Victim, survivor, thriver.
Yeah.
A lot of us get stuck in the victim framework. It's like, man, my dad was gone. My dad was drinking. My family don't like me. Man, my family outcasted me. Man, I was this to the family. Man, people don't give me job. Man, like, my employer, is, a jerk. And so we get caught up in that victim kind of framing mindset. And yes, people do that stuff to us all the time. Coming up in my career, man, like, people were coming at me with all kinds of racism. Even when I started being a professor at UC Santa Barbara,
Yeah.
they were trying to make me make copies for them. These are other professors.
Wow.
Because they thought I was an assistant and not an actual professor.
Wow.
So, I could stay on that victim mindset, or I could move to that next one, which is what we've been talking about. That's the survivor. I got skills. I know how to navigate. I'm not going to let these people's attitudes about me change me. Also, that negative role modeling, I'm going to flip it, and it's going to become a positive for me in the long run. And then the next phase, the final phase, is the thriving. And that thriving piece is so important that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to reach. And the thriving piece is when you say, hey, all these things have happened to me, all these people have done things to me, but because of that, I'm going to be better in life, and not just for myself, but for others. So a lot of times we have to figure out a way to turn around the negative role models in our lives into positive actions from ourselves.
Yeah. There's so many people that have been in my life that have shown me how not to act, right?
Yeah.
And I've been equally as fortunate to have role models that showed me how to act. But I think having that awareness to be going through intense suffering and to identify the value of that, right? To go through an experience with, an alcoholic father, and to say, hey, there's lessons here for me to learn. I think that's a powerful thing that some people may not be able to pick up on, like when you're going through, and for good reason, right? I mean, you're suffering, right? You're in pain. And a lot of people will tell you, hey, it's okay. And they'll give you a lot of latitude to be a victim. And from my perspective, what it comes down to is, when events happen to you and they cause pain, you process that, right? And you can be a victim for that time. You don't need to identify as a victim necessarily, but you can go through that process, right? But then at a certain point, you got to start looking at the situation and start thinking about what's next. Like, what's my next step here, right? I've suffered this pain. It can't be for nothing, right? Because if you go to the gym and suffer pain and there's results, right? Everybody gets happy, right? The same is true for any other pain that you suffer in life. There's a lesson there. There's something good that can come out of that. And I truly believe that. I believed it then. And so my relationship with suffering is also kind of a central theme that I've always sort of been aware about, but it kind of became more articulated over time. At first, suffering to me was just so, it was scary, and I felt so like, why am I in this? Why do I have to feel all this stuff? Right. And then over time it became like, hey, well, I can actually learn a lot from all this pain that I'm, having to go through. I'm learning all these skills. And then, later on and got into, like I told you about in middle school, starting to see results. The more I chose my suffering and produced results, I got to be experiencing more and more success and get more of what I wanted out of life.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think it's
Evolution is important.
yeah, I think it's important for us to distinguish like when also you don't get to choose suffering, like suffering just chases you,
Yes.
right? And like man, that's messed up. Like that people have to go through so much suffering, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's poverty or whether it's abuse or whether like people that don't get a choice. And then there's the philosophy of, hey, I've been through that, but I'm not going to let that define me.
Right.
I'm going to let it refine me, or I'm going to refine myself based on
Mhm.
that. And then there's the philosophy of like, and I'm going to seek out knowing that suffering equals growth. I'm going to seek out, I'm going to choose, right, to push myself,
Yeah.
working out, that kind of studying,
Studying. Yeah, exactly.
because then I know that I don't like it and it's painful,
Mhm.
but I'm going to grow from it.
But on the other side is the life I wanna live, you know?
Exactly. Man, that's powerful. I want to get back to a little bit on the background of alcoholism, because there's studies like the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism shows that children of alcoholics are 4 times more likely to develop behavioral or emotional challenges, yet access to consistent mentorship and mindfulness intervention um, helps to reduce, right, those numbers. I know you talk about mentorship as a student, um, and along the way in your journey, right, thinking about college and thinking of doing better, you had some mentors along the way.
Mhm.
One of them being a coach you had, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, local legend in Santa Barbara, John Lee, was a English teacher at San Marcos High School for 30 some odd years and was a coach of the, boys and girls volleyball teams. Um, just a legendary figure in this community, kind of one of the mayoral figures at East Beach down, on the volleyball courts down there. And um, long story short, we were in, my mom and taken me and with her partner um, out to Colorado for my freshman to junior year of high school. We moved back in my senior year, um, and I went to San Marcos High School as a senior. And when I was in Colorado, I had taken up men's indoor volleyball, the 6-man game, and I came back the summer before my senior year, and I was like, go to talk to John Lee, who's the head coach there, and I said, hey, I played in Colorado. I'd really like to play on the team this year. And he's like, great, come out. The girls are having a practice. Come out and practice with them, and let me see what you got. Right. And so the first time I played, wrapping up practice, and I go over and talk to him. He's like, hey, I'm gonna be honest with you. You're a strong kid. You're tall. You have a lot of potential, but as it stands right now, you're not good enough to make the team.
Mm.
And I was like, whoa, because I really wanted to play. I was great out in Colorado, where it wasn't quite as competitive as, Southern California volleyball is pretty legendary. I said, well, is there anything I can do? He said, yeah, you can come and you can practice with the girls, which is a fall season, every single practice, get here, first person here, first person, last person to leave, help set up the nets, stay, practice, work as hard as you can and improve. And then when you try out in the spring, if you're good enough, I'll put you on the team. And so,
So he pretty much gave you a double season.
yeah, he gave me a double season and he gave me an opportunity, right? He
Yeah.
said, if you work hard and you create, growth in yourself.
That's fascinating, because I said double season, so one person would think of it like, oh man, that's twice the work. But then you replied to me, you gave me an opportunity.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, the philosophy in life I'm just discovering in you, that when other people see it as double work, You
Right.
see it as an opportunity.
Yeah. He didn't say no. Right.
Yeah.
He gave me an in.
Yeah.
So what I did was I took full ownership of that opportunity and did exactly what he asked me to do. And you could ask him, but probably more. I was there every single day for every single practice. I don't think I missed a single one. And then as a senior in high school, I didn't have a car yet. Didn't get a car until later in my senior year, and so this is like the whole fall semester. I had to figure out my rides and ride with friends, or just walk. There's one time I walked from San Marcos all the way back to our house in Goleta, just to make these practices with the women's team happen, so I could get better. And then, when the spring tryouts came around, I'd gotten a lot better. The women's team at San Marcos was incredible that year, and then the men's team was incredible as well. There's a couple of professional guys that came out of that class, and we went to the CIF semifinals that year. But I'm ruining the headline, which is I made the team after working so hard, and that was a very important moment for me that John Lee created, right? Which was he gave me an opportunity. It was on me to take advantage of it. I took full advantage of it, and then he kept his word. Like, if you improve and you grow, you'll be on the team. And he gave me the last spot that was available on the team, right? And there was other guys that wanted to play, didn't make the team, and I beat him out by showing up every single day in the fall semester to all the practices and improving. And that's quite honestly, there was other experiences in my life leading up to that point where, I learned those lessons of, like, if you put the hard work in, you're going to see results, right? Like, that was when it locked in, where I was told point blank, you're not going to make the team, which was a gift that he gave me by saying, you will not make my team if you don't do more work. Yeah. Right. Because he set the standard, like, you're going to have to improve dramatically. And then when he gave me the opportunity, he said, it's possible. And I see that it's possible for you to make my team. So I wasn't so deflated and discouraged by his no that I would stop, right? It was and I know that he thought through that, right? Because he liked my attitude. He liked how he first saw me, but he just knew, like, his team was going to be great, and there wasn't a spot for me with my current skill level. But he gave me that shot, and I rose to that occasion. I was proud of that in myself. He was proud of me and gave me a spot on the team. I worked even harder during the season to get even better. And up until that point, like, I had done pretty well in high school grades wise, but I didn't have a college plan. I didn't even apply to any 4-year universities. I knew the best I could do with what I could afford was to go to community college or something like that. But
so
as I got through the volleyball season, I knew I wanted to keep playing volleyball. And then so that, I'll give you like the preview of, that's where college comes in. I was like, I want to keep going with this.
So you just mentioned in your mind, you didn't have enough money for college.
That's right.
And you leaned a little bit on volleyball or I guess my question for you is, you went to community college.
Mm-hmm.
Why not a 4-year?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. So I didn't have my mom and my dad, they didn't go to a 4-year college, right? And
so you're first generation college from your parents.
From my parents, yeah. And so we just didn't have those kind of conversations going on as I was getting into like the applying for colleges years about, you could, apply for FAFSA, take out student loans. Like, here's how you do all that. Like, I didn't have access to a lot of information. There was other families that we were friends, and I would hear bits and pieces, but it didn't sink in with me because I was like, I mean, there's no way I can afford a, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 degree, right? I'm going to have to go. And what I had heard is that, like, if you go to community college and do well, maybe you can transfer to a 4-year university. And so I had done pretty well in high school, and then I wanted to keep playing volleyball, and I knew that Santa Barbara City College had a great volleyball team, and I was like, okay, they'll accept me if I apply, so I'm going to go there, right? And one of the things that was great about getting the opportunity with John Lee to play on his team is I got good enough to make that team, which the Santa Barbara City College volleyball team is pretty legendary in and of itself. Santa Barbara is a huge volleyball community, but they put a lot of Division I athletes through to UCSB and to other schools in the state. And so If I wanted to keep playing, I had to keep doing well in school, right? I had to make good grades, and I had to be on track to transfer to a 4-year university, right? And so it all kind of came together. The harder I worked, the more it came together. And then, I played for 2 seasons, and I redshirted a season and played for 2 seasons. I was at City College for 3 years, and did really well there, and well enough to transfer to UCSB, and then did my best when I got to UCSB. And so all that kind of started with
Did you
volleyball.
play volleyball at UCSB?
No, I didn't play. Well, I didn't play on the team there. I played beach volleyball, and so John Lee ran these legendary beach volleyball camps for years and years. I'm talking like decades, down at East Beach in the summertime. And so when I graduated from high school, he gave me a shot to work at those camps as a coach, and I worked my way up in his organization there to be kind of his second in command, like the assistant director of the camps. And I ran those for 5 or 6 years. And from the time I was, 18 years old up to like 23, 24 years old, all while I was at UCSB, like during the summertime. He giving me that opportunity, actually, started making money in addition to restaurants, right? And so I could pay for UCSB and pay for City College. And those are some fortunate years that John Lee kind of sparked,
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about really a mentor, a coach that steps into your life. We all need a coach in life. All of
Absolutely.
us. A lot of us like to think we don't, or I made it on my own, or I'm a lone wolf. But the truth is that like we all need a coach in life. We all need guidance.
Absolutely.
And you were blessed to have John Lee in your life, and for him to see the potential in you. And then once you're in college, y'all reconnect, and he's like, hey, come be my second in command at the volleyball camps. These are beautiful volleyball courts right on the beach in
Yeah.
Santa Barbara. It's a beautiful setting.
Wasn't a bad gig.
Yeah, it's not a bad gig. And my kids did it. My twins did it when they were
Yeah.
little. And then my son did it a few years back. And
Awesome.
just the last couple of years, actually, he was over there at the volleyball camp.
Great.
And, but yeah, man. So it's like when I meet you, you have that kind of guidance. I'm your professor. So you've gotten this far, but you still didn't really know if you were going to fully commit or be able to go to law school when I met you.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing
Where
on
were you at?
house money, so to speak, when I got to, getting to UCSB was a big achievement initially. And, at that time, it's so interesting. I got to UCSB and started doing the best I'd ever done academically. And it felt like I was finally in a learning environment that made sense to me. And so I was really into the sociology curriculum, which you kind of got me exposed to when I took your Soc 1 class, and then the Soc 170J, the juvenile justice courses. And it was really the juvenile justice course where I started thinking about a career in law, because I was thinking about maybe there's something more than this for me. Like maybe it's not just, getting an undergraduate degree. Maybe I need to come on and, really lean into my leadership skills, which I was developing athletically and at these beach camps, right? And as a restaurant manager, maybe I am actually built to be like a real leader, right? Like I could go and lead companies. And my internal kind of thought process there was like, well, there's probably 2 ways that I can establish immediate credibility enough to be a leader eventually through enough hard work. And that would start with either getting an MBA like my grandfather did, or I could go and get a law degree, right? Because at that time I had, there's a lot of examples of people who were presidents and senators and all these different things and leaders, right? Law degrees. And I knew that I was much more into the reading and writing kind of side of things and orating and all that than I was into the, spreadsheets and tables and the mathematical side of things. And so for me, I pushed forward, kind of with an interest in law school as I was wrapping up those couple of years at UCSB, which was really kind of that interest was magnified by seeing kind of some of the problems in society that needed to be fixed, right? And so what's the best way to fix those problems? You got to figure out what the rules of the game are, right? And that's what kind of spoke to me about law school as well, is like you get to learn how society is set up and what the rules are that you need to navigate, and then what can be changed, right? If the rule's wrong, what's the process for doing that, above board ethically and with integrity and trying to get, better outcomes for society. And so all those kind of seeds were planted in my experience in your classes and the sociology curriculum at UCSB. And then those kind of were watered and blossomed and evolved into me applying to law school, getting in and going.
Man, that's powerful. I mean, discovering where you want to go in life when you're young like that, or let's just say when you're back in school like that, it's tough, man. It's a struggle. I remember when I was an undergrad, I was thinking, I know I want to help kids that are struggling
Mhm.
in poor communities.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, then I'm gonna run a nonprofit one day. And I was like, no, never mind. I want to be a teacher. No, never mind. Let me be a therapist or counselor. And I was shifting back and forth. And I even started a business major because I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go make a lot of money. And then when I make money, I can give back to the community. And I ended up settling for a human development major in undergrad. And, you get to learn about, like, especially focused on adolescents. So you get to learn a lot about their development and how to intervene and support them. So that was my degree. And I was happy, was ready to graduate. I was going to go run a nonprofit and help young people out that were struggling. And that's when I met who would become my future wife, Rebecca. And she was getting a master's degree at Berkeley at the time.
Mhm.
I was like, "Hey, what's a master's degree?" And she's like, "Oh, it's just more school. You just got to write a paper, a 30-page paper, and you should try it." And I was like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah." So she helped me apply to grad school
Wow.
at Berkeley, and um, but when I applied, I checked two boxes. One is a master's degree, and one's a PhD. And I didn't even know what I was getting myself into, man. So, like, I got a letter of acceptance. I was like, "Oh, damn, they admitted me to the PhD program."
Wow.
So I get out there, and you get to introduce yourself, and all these fancy minds,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, brilliant minds. It's like Brown University, Harvard undergrad, Caltech, big places, people with big brains, they show up. And they're introducing themselves. I'm so and so, and my research is on blah 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 blah. Words I don't even understand,
Yeah.
right? And then it comes to me, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, well, my name's Victor Rios. I'm from Oakland, and I'm about to get this degree so I could go into the community and help young people out." And like people like were like
Yeah.
literally like almost laughing at me, like, "What's this
Yeah.
clown doing here? He's in the wrong environment, right?"
Yeah.
And even there was a group of students that made a bet. It was three of them, and one of them told me this after I graduated. She goes, "Hey, Victor, I just wanted to tell you, and I feel bad about it because I graduated before all of them." Um, she said, "I feel bad about it, but we made a bet to see when you would drop out,
Wow.
first semester or second semester, because pretty much people were gambling against you because we thought you had no clue what you were doing."
Jeez.
So I get to grad school, man, and I got lost in terms of what was happening, but all I remember was the commitment, and
Mhm.
the commitment was no matter where I'm at, no matter what they're trying to get me to specialize in, I'm gonna remember why I came here, and that's to help young people in the community. That was my purpose.
Yeah.
And so I turned this very advanced academic program into something that was going to help me come back and help the community. And that's when I graduated my PhD, wrote a book on how to support young people that are going through the school to prison pipeline and reverse that pipeline.
Mhm.
That's where I gathered all my material that I would eventually teach you in juvenile justice.
Mhm.
And I think when you walked into my class, you saw I had a purpose and you were like, "Hey man, this guy has a purpose. I have a purpose. Let me go figure that out for myself."
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, all up until that point, I think I was getting all these kind of previews and feeling parts of what I wanted to go do and that I should have this purpose, but then it kind of just, it was a moment of clarity, right? Like kind of walking in there and hearing your story, because the way that you told it the first time, it it locked me into my core. I was like, I must go make a difference in society. I must go do something that pushes me out of my comfort zone and achieve something that where I can help people, right? And people that were in situations like I was in, like you were in, right? That can help them get into a different level of their life where they are feeling better and able to help people themselves, right? Like there's so many there's so many ways that my story to where I ended up could have not happened,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was fortunate enough to have good mentors and to be able to be aware of opportunities to really put a lot of effort into, right? And be able to be aware of kind of to be able to read the room and be able to like navigate some of these dynamics that allowed me to eventually be successful. And I knew as I was going through that and experiencing more and more success, I wanted to, help people in like learn those same kind of methods and skills that I acquired. But hearing what you were working on and what your story was, and how like that kind of mentorship and helping people could immediately impact young people's lives and save them from missing out on their success, like the success that I got to experience, right? Like directly you could help them right now, right? It's not theoretical. I'm not sitting there like, oh, it'd be nice to do that someday. You can help them right now. That to me was like, I need a purpose like that where I can be involved in like, we got to stop messing around here. Like I'm going to law school. I'm going to work extremely hard and I'm going to go make it. This is
Mm-hmm.
happening.
Wow. And you did it, man. You got to law school. You finished law school. You start to work, and you're like, man, I want to fulfill this purpose of leading companies one day. That became your
Mhm.
purpose, right? But then the pandemic hit. So tell us, bring us to the pandemic, and you're like a young attorney, man, young lawyer.
Yeah, gosh. So I had just I worked my first few years. First job as an attorney was at actually UCSB for about a year and a half, and then I worked at a smaller tech company in town called Invoca, and worked for them for a couple of years. Both great experiences. Learned a ton, got a lot of opportunity early in my career, and then in 2019, September, I got a job at Zoom as senior counsel on the product team, which is basically like product compliance, looking out for privacy, security, all kinds of things like that, in connection with the software releases that the company does. And so I get on there, and I'm, the youngest attorney on there in terms of experience and all of that. I'm the green, new hire, and Zoom was much smaller then. So there was a total of, I think, 13 people on the legal team when I started, compared to there being, I think there's nearly 100 now, maybe even more, couple less, depending on where we are currently. And I worked there, got up to speed, started learning, the gig, and was doing pretty well and getting comfortable in my rhythm. And then, come into January, all hell starts breaking loose, right? Like society starts shutting down, and we just start getting busier and busier, and issues start popping up here, and then we have, our sales team's overloaded all of a sudden, right? So everything was happening all at once, right? And I can't share all the details of that time, but I can tell you that it was, as we got into March and, California shut down, as was very public at the time, news, like everyone turned to Zoom, and we were navigating that and trying to keep people connected during a time where we didn't have a plan to be connected as a
The
society.
percentages was like, yeah, of all the employees that went remote and all the students that went remote, they're like 60% of everyone that was remote was on Zoom.
I don't know the percentages, but I mean, it felt like everyone. I'll say that,
Right.
right? I mean,
It did feel like
I'll
it.
say that
Y'all
Yeah,
were the top platform that people went to.
we were the primary solution that people turned to.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, my goodness, like what an honor at that time to be
Yeah.
that solution. We were so unimaginably busy during that time because we were not, no company's ready to undergo that much growth in
How
that
much
short
sleep
period of
were you
time.
getting a night at that time?
Gosh, there's a period of time I worked 90 days straight, right? And we're talking like, not like 9 to
Not
5
a day
days,
off.
not a day off,
Not a weekend.
not,
Not a
no,
Sunday to
90
go
days,
barbecue.
90 days straight during the height of the shutdown. And it was because, we were meeting the need of the moment, right? My nieces were going to school on Zoom. I had friends calling me and saying like, "Hey, keep pushing, man." Like I lost my grandfather, but I had to say goodbye to my grandfather on Zoom, like tremendously impactful moments in work. And, that's where, like getting to Zoom, I would have never have known in 2019 that was going to happen. But as it was happening, I saw another opportunity, right? And I was like, the world needs, now I'm involved, right? Like now we can actually make a difference here. And everyone that was working there at the time.
You hadn't just found your purpose. You were in the middle of your purpose.
Like all of a sudden I was in it, right? And it was peaking beyond what I could have ever imagined. And for the people that were working in the company at the time, we were all in on that, right?
Yeah.
Like we were trying to help as many people as we possibly could. Fast forward as the dust kind of settled from that time, and the trajectory I established by working on so many different matters during that compressed period of time of growth, gave me some new opportunities, at Zoom, where I went on and started the regulatory compliance team, and then a couple of years later got to get into my current role, which is I'm leading the product compliance team that I started on as the rookie, right? Leading that team, and then also the IP team.
There, clarification, because I got a lot of like high school students,
please,
listening, and a lot of community college students, and even university students are like, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an attorney. I want to go to law school. I want that job, but maybe a little clarification, like what does that mean? Like how many people total are you leading? Like what does it mean to be in the role you're in?
Yeah. So right now, currently, I'm leading 11 attorneys, and they are divided up into kind of 3 different groups. There's kind of our core products groups, which is like the meetings, the things that you typically would think of. And then we have another team that handles a bunch of our different kind of products in other parts of our portfolio, which would be like, you think about the app marketplace, you think about our Zoom events service, and a bunch of other really impactful kind of areas of the business. And then we have the IP team, intellectual property team, who handles all of like the patents, trademarks, copyrights. And so, the team all chips in to help each other, and we have a very unified legal team in general. But the team that I lead is, it's about 11 attorneys, and growing. And then, we also have a bunch of wonderful support staff that work on the team. And so, right now I'm in charge of, some really awesome, experienced, more senior than me attorneys who work extremely hard. And I have the opportunity to lead them in an area of the business that's, it's critical, right? I mean, we're a product company, and we're overseeing the product compliance. And, what our gig is, primarily is to make sure that the business is successful, right? And they can release amazing innovations that are compliant with, the laws that we're subject to, and are compliant with societal expectations, right? And we find the right balance, so that we can have exciting software and exciting apps and solutions and meetings that are easy to use, right? And also make sure that we're meeting our obligations in the different global regions that we're operating in, so that our team has a tough job, right? And on the IP side, making sure that, all these new innovations are protected, and right, we have our ownership rights in them. And so that's a tough job as well. And especially when we're growing and we're rapidly innovating and always expanding our product portfolio and our features. A lot of work to do there. So it's, I don't find myself inside of a courtroom very often, but what we're doing is a ton of analysis and team building and teamwork and collaboration across a bunch of different functions in the company. That you have the product managers, you have engineers, you have, the go-to-market teams, you have the marketing teams, product marketing, finance teams. I mean, it takes everybody to make a product successful, right?
Yeah,
And so we get to go in there and we provide the legal perspective.
I see. I see that, man. So it seems like it's a lot of work. It's hard work that you do.
It
Law
is.
school was a lot of work. That was hard work. College was a lot of work,
It
hard
was.
work. High school was a lot of work, hard work. So I guess what I'm getting to is that, um, you know, there's people out there saying, "Hey, like, man, I got to work full time to support my family." On top of that, people are telling me go to school, whether it's community college or finishing high school, whether it's undergrad. And then someone's like, you got to go get a master's, you got to go get a law degree. So, and at one point, I think people get tired of school, tired of having to even, work a job that's not paying them enough and feeling under or not appreciated. So what advice do you have because you've had to work so hard? I mean, you said you went 90 days straight working. But then that goes back to then working full time at a restaurant, going to school full time, and then running summer camp. And then that goes back to being a little kid and at all times having to work to make sure you and your family were safe.
Hmm.
So your whole journey is about hard work, right? But easier said than done. And so, how do you find balance in the world where you seem to be working a lot and you've been working a lot since you were little?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think, like anybody at those various levels, I struggled with balance, right? And it was something that um, I had to really look at intentionally to address. But I would say where I achieved balance consistently was later on in life, thus far, which coming out of law school, I mean, man, I had anxiety, right? Like all this pressure to be successful. Is all the, you got to pass the bar exam. You got to go get your first job. You got to be successful at that first job. You got to grow your career. And then I had, all this unresolved stuff from my childhood that I hadn't, taken care of totally yet. And then there was pressures, all of society's rules about like, well, you should be married by this age and have kids by this and family and all that stuff. And then I had, some personal family stuff happen where a loved one passed away that was very close to me and things like that. And I'll tell you, like, there was a day I woke up as a young attorney and I was just so tired of feeling anxiety and just these strong feelings that were just getting in the way of like my purpose and my why of like what I was hoping to achieve. And you get kind of burnt out, right? And I was just like, man, I'm so tired of feeling just constantly like worried.
Yeah.
And I was like, what can I do to like alleviate this anxiety, which turns into kind of a depressive state as well, because you just get so tired. It feels like there's no way out of it, right?
Mhm.
And I didn't want to, without saying anything negatively here, I didn't want to go on any kind of medication or anything like that. I wanted to figure out a way that was there something I could do personally, physically, right? That could help. And so it's actually funny. I literally just did like a Google search, right? Like, how do I take care of my anxiety? And then it was really funny. There was this article, I want to say it was on like Thrive Global or something like that. And it was this personal trainer, like really successful personal trainer who suffered from anxiety. And like the title of the article was like how this meathead did a 31-day meditation challenge that changed his life forever.
Wow.
And so I read this article and this guy was, he's a bodybuilder, tough guy, tattoos. He said, his whole life was concerned with his appearance and how strong he was and all these things, but he was miserable. He woke up one day miserable, full of anxiety. And I was like, I woke up one day miserable and full of anxiety. And he said, I received a challenge from a friend to meditate for 7 days straight. And he said, and if his friend said, if you do that, I guarantee it'll change your life forever. And so the guy was super skeptical, but he sat down and he did the 7-day challenge. And then he ended up meditating for a 31-day challenge. And he said that his life, and went all these different examples why his life was so much better. And he was living like the life of his dreams. He was achieving at the highest levels ever in his career that he always hoped for. And so I was like, sign me up. Sounds good. Like probably not going to work. I probably have to go figure out like a therapist or something, but who knows? And so being the kind of ambitious person that I am, I signed up myself up for a 31-day challenge for meditation. And I downloaded a meditation app, and I resolved that I was going to do this no matter what, right? Like even if I wasn't seeing results, I'm going to finish 31 days. And so I did that. And literally by day 7, my anxiety was gone. I was meditating for 10 minutes a day in the morning. And we're talking about here, we're not.
Walk me through it. What's a meditation like?
Yeah. So
10 minutes.
what I was doing was I was sitting on a mat on the ground, cross-legged, sitting up straight, but not like, strained or anything like that. And initially I was doing guided meditations on like a meditation app, which shows you like how to breathe and for how long, and then how to into your nose. And then you exhale for a count, like four counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then typically your eyes are closed. You're not straining to shut your eyes. You're just relaxing and shutting them. And the whole objective, there's a lot of different objectives that you can have during meditation, but the primary objective is no objective, right? You're sitting there
Do nothing.
in peace. You're not thinking about anything. You're not thinking about all those things that worry you in the future. You're not thinking about all the things that are causing you pain in the past that you wish you could change, but you can't, right? You let go of all that, and you give yourself permission to just let go for however long you signed up for, right? You get a 10-minute session. You sit there and you just focus on your breath and producing those breaths in a disciplined, rhythmic fashion until the session is over.
Discipline rhythmic. So it could be in 4 or out 4.
Yeah, whatever. You can go through a guided meditation, or you can do, like, for example, there's a technique that's widely known. It's box breathing, right? So it's a 4-second inhale, 4-second hold, and then a 4-second exhale, 4-second hold, repeat, right? And so a lot of times you can do the box breathing out in society, right? If you have a panic attack or like you're
And nobody knows
scared.
you're doing it.
Yeah, and so like I do that. I did it when I was walking in here. I got here in my car, did a box breathing session for like a minute just to kind of like, get my adrenaline under control and come in and be calm, and it works, right? And so I did this challenge for 31 days, and I came out of that and I felt like I had some kind of superpower that I just discovered, or like people that play video game, like get the cheat code, the invincible in the video game, right? And so I was like, I'm doing this like no matter what, because this is taking away my anxiety. I'm thinking more clearly. I really was performing at my very best I'd ever performed at work. And so initially, like, that excitement got me into meditation, right? Like I had solved my anxiety and pain and gotten that under control, and I was performing well at work, and that's all exciting, right? But creating a meditation practice over a long period of time is where I actually saw real benefits.
How long have you been doing it for?
So now since 2018.
Wow.
And so it's evolved, right? Like it used to be like I had to go sit on the cushion for 10 minutes every morning and like have that ritual, right? And that was good for me to establish my practice. But now, and consistent with some of the prominent kind of mindfulness practitioners in the world, I try to make everything a meditation if I can, right? And all that really requires is that you just focus on your breath and try to be fully present in this moment,
Right here,
right?
right now. So right now, our conversation is a meditation, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. I mean, I am doing my level best, even though we're talking about my past and things like that, doing my level best to be fully present with you, and how I'm bringing myself back to the moment. If I get away from the present, is just focusing on my breath for a second. And you probably see me take a couple of deep breaths just to reorient myself into right here. I'm right here.
Yeah.
I turned my phone off, which is also helpful, right? And nothing is distracting me from giving you my full attention.
You would have met me maybe 5 years ago. You would have, and you did. So you remember me a little bit, but I don't know, like this watching my back thing, man. I'm always like, and then I got into, therapy, a little bit of meditation, just being in the moment. And you don't see me watching my back all the time. You don't see me trying at the restaurant, trying to find like the corner table where like I have my back to the wall.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I want to live right here, right now, and not worried about some future 2 minutes later, someone comes in and looks for me and tries to tries to, damage or injure me.
Right.
Right. And I got to be ready to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta watch your back. You gotta make sure aware environment, like
Yeah.
we talked about when you walked in here in terms of surviving. But that doesn't mean that you need to live your whole existence on some worry or fear of something that's about to happen.
Right. And you can also be present. Like if you're being aware of the fact that you're snapping into survival mode is very important, right? So if I walk into a room and I immediately start scanning for threats and resources, meditation helps me be aware of the fact that I'm doing that, right? Like, cause if you're doing that automatically, it means that you're not necessarily in control and you're probably not very present, right? It's just your brain is taking you for a ride. Just like, when I was experiencing anxiety, right? Like my brain was taking me for a ride. Um, but I think what was really powerful about meditation and the primary benefit that I've experienced is it allows you to put a little bit of space, some breathing room between stimulus and response. And what do I mean by that? Stimulus is the events that happen in our life, right? That cause you to feel a certain way. It's happy, sad, mad, whatever it is. And then your response is how you react to them, right? And how that shows up in the external world. So the event may cause you pain inside, right? Say for example, if which would never happen, but if you offended me right now, right? And I got really upset, just involuntarily, it happened inside of me, boom, I'm upset, right? There is actually a way for us to stretch out the period of time between how I feel inside and how I manifest my feeling outside, right? And for me, my meditation practice has given me options, right? I can be aware of the fact that, say, for example, I became offended, right? And that I'm angry. I can process that anger. And then through that processing, I can choose my response. Now, early on in my life, I didn't have that choice. There's a lot of automatic behaviors that would just happen because I grew up in an environment that I couldn't control. And then my brain kind of modeled that environment, right? And so things would happen and I have very, much more volatile kind of behaviors where I would much more reactive. Um, I'll tell you, and I know you can relate to this, but when you get into the professional environment, the more that you can put space between stimulus and response, events and your reactions to them, it's an absolute superpower in the professional environment. It's an absolute superpower in your personal environment. And it's the gateway to not feeling ways that you don't want to feel, right?
Yeah.
There's an old saying, I believe it's a Zen saying, which is don't shoot yourself with the arrow twice, right? And so if you are shot with an arrow, you're going to feel the pain of the arrow and, you're going to be injured. But then if you react very poorly to being shot with the arrow and you hurt a bunch of other people and you do a bunch of really harmful things to the external world, start a war, whatever the case is, right? Then the old Zen saying is that you're shooting yourself with the arrow twice, right? You only have to get shot with the arrow once.
Yeah. That's powerful, man. I mean, it sounds like you found that balance between we all have to work hard. That's just a part of life. Um, but then being able to enjoy the little moments that you get with family,
Exactly.
loved ones.
That's the balance. That's where it comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's like you are creating space by being present in moments. And I think what happens is when we get so busy and we work so hard and on things that are kind of seemingly repetitive motions, right? So I go to work every day, create a bunch of crazy issues. I come home, I eat, I sleep, go to bed, right? Wake up, repeat, right? That's when time kind of compresses and you start to kind of feel burnt out and like, why am I doing this all for? All those things kind of pop in your head. But when you are able to wake up in the morning and I go and step out on my porch and like have a sip of coffee and look at the beautiful day and watch a hummingbird go by and be fully present for that. Like I have all the stressful stuff to deal with in just a second, right? But for right now, this is my space and I'm going to balance it that way. And then when I'm with my family and sitting down for breakfast on a Saturday morning, like I'm going to give them my full attention. And how I'm able to do that is underlying that moment is a foundation of meditation, right? Where I've learned how to be present, even though life is crazy. And I've been able to kind of influence my own environment internally, right? Like how I'm feeling internally to show up fully present in a moment and give that 100%. And then the next moment may be crazy and I'll give that my full attention too, but it's not time for that. So it's okay. I'm just going to let that go for now and give people I love and care about and give myself the attention that they deserve and have a wholesome experience in these moments, right? And like, if you take that approach to life, which is very hard to do, and it requires you to practice every day. I fail at this every day, by the way, too. So I succeeded at it more than I ever used to, but I also fail at it. But you keep showing up on this practice. That's how you start to really find balance in life and start to really put all of your attention into things that really matter and fulfill you, and let go of the things that don't.
Beautiful. Aaron, it's been a wonderful conversation. I'm going to end the episode with one final question, all right?
Yeah.
This is a segment we call Real with Rios, and it's you know, I like fixing things, you know, like ever since I was a little kid, I fixed, you know, broken TVs, broken radios, got older, started fixing cars. I still fix a car up with my son right now. We're fixing, and my daughters too. I've been fixing a 67 Camaro for a while. It's running. It's good. It's doing good. It's there. But you always got to repair those cars because they always break down somehow, some way. So if you could fix anything in your life right now, what would you fix?
Wow. That's a good question. If I could fix anything in my life, I think it really kind of comes down to I would find even more time. I'd commit myself even more to finding the balance that is needed, because I think as you get a little bit older, life gets more and more demanding, and it seems more and more justifiable that you're putting so much effort into your work, into building your career, into doing the grind, right? And yet time becomes more and more precious.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm realizing more and more after all this struggle and things I've gone through to get successful, it really is all about time and people, right? We want to be seen, loved, and appreciated, and we want our loved ones want to be seen, loved, and appreciated, right? And so if I could fix anything right now, it'd be to develop more mastery of that practice of really being able to, you know, be balanced and get more time with the people I love. And I'm on that journey, but I would fix that instantly if I could. Instead, I'll continue my practice, and I'm optimistic.
Yeah, we're always growing. We're always developing. I appreciate your time. It's been a wonderful episode.
Thank you.
This has been Sueños to Success. Looking forward to our next episode, and for now, appreciation for you being here.
Thank you, Dr. Rios.
Thank you.